and welcome to Laser Santa Fe. This is our 4th laser of the year and our 10th laser Santa Fe. Our second year, we're finishing up our second year of offering these lasers. So, if you are not already familiar, what is laser? What does that mean? It's an acronym. It stands for Leonardo Art Science Evening Rendezvous. And what is Leonardo? Leonardo is an organization of art, science, and technology that has existed now for over 50 years. It's international. They publish a wonderful journal called the Leonardo Journal of Art and Science, as well as the Leonardo Music Journal, all coming out of MIT Press. And about a little under 10 years ago, a group in San Francisco, where Leonardo is located, decided to start these lasers. And they gave them this name, and they wanted to have an opportunity for informal presentations, talks between artists and scientists, or people who are practitioners of art science. And since those first lasers in San Francisco, it's really exploded. There are over 35 lasers around the world, and we are so proud to be selected to be a laser affiliate city here in Santa Fe. We are, when I say we are SciArt Santa Fe. We are finally a not-for-profit 501c3 here in Santa Fe, and our main people who have been involved in creating this, who I want to thank here, are back with the camera taking stills, Amy Pilling, who totally organized this whole thing and did all the press and all that, and you got emails from her and all that stuff, so I want to thank Amy. She usually hides in the background, so and she brought the cookies. Also, thanking Jared Rendon-Trompak, who's been going to be videotaping tonight, and we'll be placing that online for you to see. And then all of our community. My co-organizer of Laser, Susan Latham, who I'll say more about in a moment. She also is our featured speaker. And then members of our community, Fred Unterseer, who is always coming and helping, and also was featured at a laser. Of course, Tom, who is another one of our featured speakers, Paul Biaggi. And I just want to give a special thank you to Tom and Paul, because they also contributed to support to this laser tonight. So thank you so much. They did that online. So just a word about SciArt Santa Fe. There's a little paper over by the cookies and the water that talks about SciArt Santa Fe. Also, our co-organizer of SciArt Santa Fe in the back is Morgan Barnard. You can find more information about us at sciartsantafe.org, and as I said, we are now a 501c3, so you can help to support us, and there's going to be a number of different ways in which you can do that. So please look for that. Laser Santa Fe is the main thing that we do, but we do many other art science projects. Amy's involved in lots of educational outreach projects. There's a lot going on. Okay, before I introduce our speakers, one thing that the Laser International community does is a community share. And so they have very strict rules, and we follow them. In under 1 minute, we ask members of our community, people who came here tonight, if you would like to stand up and just tell us something about what you're doing related to art science. We can do that now. And can someone... Time. Yes. Okay. Okay, so strict to 1 minute.
I want to stand up, so I want to be sure to see who these people
are. Oh, okay. So strict to 1 minute. Would someone like to share? No? Fred?
1 minute.
I've been doing a lot lately.
Okay. Fred is a pioneering a holographer, does incredible work both very much in the art science crossover field. So look for him. Paul.
I'm just finishing editing a third book called The Dancer from Beyond. It's about how art through dance changes consciousness and throws over a post-apocalyptic tyrannical regime.
Oh, say that again, a little louder, it's so profound.
No,
please.
A post-apocalyptic tyrannical regime, kind of a la Trump.
Oh, no.
Sorry if anybody I've offended anyone.
Well, I want to say Paul has been part of my science and art group for many years, but Paul dances almost every day of the week. So whatever he's writing, he knows what he's talking about.
Anyone else? Share what you're doing? Yes.
I'm Paul White, and I have several meetup groups. I have an art meetup group where I post events like this. I have a poetry and prose meetup group, and I have a travel group. I'm also a glass artist. I work a lot with a lot of interesting kinds of glass called dichroic glass, and currently I'm setting up a glass blowing studio, or will be, and planning on working with lasers and other kinds of technology, fiber optics with glass. So, more to come.
I'm Amy Throwing, and I've been doing some educational work through STEAM NM, and we just were working with some 6th to 8th graders who are college bound, probably. They're advanced kids. And we did a bio art workshop with them. And one of the things that really struck me was we had them draw for 20 minutes, and then we had them sculpt for another 20 minutes. And their teacher mentioned at the end, she said, "This is so great. They never get to do this at school." And it really struck me. They're just like, there's so much going on, and there's so much delivery of content and assessment that they don't actually have time to settle down and just do creative work. So.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
Hi, my name is Earl Jennings. My daytime activities are primarily patent law and computer architecture research. My evening or early morning activities are usually late 20th and early 21st century theoretical physics with some interest in anthropology and agronomy.
Awesome. In front?
I'm Brooks Bowman. I'm a photographer in town, and I've been working recently with a printing Epson printer that is a carbon-based printer. So it actually is only throwing carbon onto a page, and so it's an interesting way to carbon sequester it very small.
Is that electrically conductive? You could do circuits?
No. Why haven't we even tried that? I don't think it does that.
There are printers like that.
Anyone else? Morgan.
Morgan Barner, digital artist here in Santa Fe. Currently actually working with Andrea on a project where we're using electron microscope photography of air pollution to create sculptural forms for a public art project. And it's been really fun playing around with different approaches to creating forms and generating forms from these inspirational images.
Anyone else?
You know, I did think about him doing something.
Okay, I thought you were doing a lot. What do you want to talk about?
I'm working on a couple projects for the next current program here. One of the it's to impress you, it's an off-axis Fourier transform multi-lens holographic optical element. Basically, it's a mandala project with pure light. And then I'm also working on a piece that talks about a piece that always points to the exact magnetic center of the Earth. So those are the current projects I'm on. But you didn't hear it from me.
Okay. Anyone else?
Karen Blaha. I'm a scientist at Sandia Labs, but I've just always been really interested in arts also. I play with pop-up books and trying to design some of those, just kind of whatever I find interesting.
Karen's books are amazing.
And make sure these people sign up.
Right. Anyone else? This is such an incredible group. Even the people I'm seeing that didn't say anything. Please be sure to introduce yourself to the people who shared. If there's something that interests you, or just mingle. So
we will have a Q&A at the end.
you may think of Tom as our scientist and Susan as our artist, as I sometimes do. But truly, we have two people here who are both artists and scientists in a true melding from the beginning. And in addition to that, we also have two people who are incredibly important community leaders in art science in Santa Fe and throughout New Mexico. So Tom, who I first met in around 2011, 2012, was the director of the Innovation Center at Intel, really the creator of that Innovation Center. I worked with Tom because he supported a major art science symposium that I was involved in called ICEA, the International Symposium for Electronic Art, in 2012. And Tom managed to get Intel to support that project, and was really instrumental in a lot of the projects that surrounded that. It was statewide. About 90 different partners statewide. But Tom has also worked with Currents, of course, which has already been mentioned. He's a member of the board there. He's worked with Cachette Dance Company. We have a number of people who are involved in dance and performance here, and makes incredible glass sculptures, which I'm sure he will talk about. But as well as being obviously a leader in technology, working at Intel, and technology and innovation. Now on to our really featured speaker, Susan. Today, Susan Latham. I met maybe about 3 years ago. Moving to when I moved to Santa Fe, trying to find out, well, what's going on in art science here. And everybody pointed the way to Susan and said she had been and continues to be so instrumental in holding together the community here in Santa Fe in science and art. She started the SciArt network at the Forum for SciArt that was at the Santa Fe complex for many, many years, and has really been the driving force of these lasers and of SciArt Santa Fe, as well as being an incredible artist. You'll hear about her artwork here, but I don't know if she's going to mention, so she asked me to particularly mention that she has a degree in occupational therapy, which is a kind of a generalist science degree, as well as, and that degree at the time was, you were saying, the only one that you could do a science major and a art minor.
The day I graduated from high school, I declared that I wanted to get a major in science and a minor in art. So I go way back.
And that was the options at that time. So anyway, without any further delay, let me turn it over to Susan and Tom.
And let me get the slide set up real quick to advance.
Okay. There we go. Well, I am honored to be the Leonardo speaker tonight in one of my favorite galleries, the elegant Evoke Contemporary. And where is Catherine and Lon? I want to say thank you. Hello, thank you. Also, I'm so pleased to be here with Tom Greenbaum. Now listen carefully. Tom is a multifaceted, multi-talented, multimedia science artist. And he was willing to present with me tonight, so thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Susan.
One of the important things that you need to know about the Leonardo laser talks is that their intention is to educate, inspire, and to demonstrate science and art in action. So tonight I'm going to do my best to share with you my experience of this, the melding of these two disciplines and how they structure and energize my creative process. So I also promise you that I'm going to highlight moments where that flash of inspiration hit. You know, that's kind of, boom, that's where something new is about to emerge. The title of my talk is Why Not? Now, it's very appropriate that this title is a question because there are so many unanswered questions in the science of knots. However, my friends, there is one question I do know the answer to, and that's why I knot. But before I give you that answer, I want you to come with me back in time. We're going to go to the National Genome Center in Santa Fe. It's 2009, and I'm there with the Forum for Science and Art. That's the group that I was shepherding at the time. One of our speakers, Richard Kramer, a mathematician on sabbatical from Princeton, was the one giving the talk. And the title of his talk was Knots in Math and Knots in Nature. Well, I was enthralled right away. Beautiful images of knots, you know, and all of a sudden I saw them as sculptural forms. And I thought, well, what might be? And you know what I came up with? A big, fat, velvet nautical knot. And I thought, well, I'm going to make that. You know, it was just in my mind. Now, meanwhile, Richard's probably talking a lot about math, and I'm probably not paying attention. But I had that spark. And it didn't take long for me to talk Richard into helping me to configure the knot. Now, this is it. Now, it's 30 inches by 25. So it's pretty big. Actually, it's the biggest fiber sculpture that I ever made. But it is a science and art because I had my friend Richard help me put that together. So now I want to get back to my promise. I said, well, I will tell you, why do I make knots? Well, the first thing that I need to say about myself is that I am a philomorph. A philomorph is a lover of form. And it's always been that way. So I notice things, I notice the shapes. And the idea that I could be creating new forms and shapes just with fiber. Now, that may be surprising to you, but because I'm best known as a metal sculptor, but I have fiber in my fingertips. And that is because of the tutelage of my mother, who was an expert seamstress. When I knew her, all she ever sewed was Paris originals, pardon me. But then I got to thinking, clothing construction is very much like sculpture. It's 3D. You see it from all sides. You have to engineer pieces that fit together, right? And it was only recently that I really gave my mother credit for all that art education in 3D. So I wanted to say, no, the next reason, I think we're on number 3. No, we don't change it yet, Tom. So I think I did 2 reasons why. The third reason, the main focus there is experimentation. I can create a fiber knot, live with it for a little while, and then say, well, what else could I do? Undo it and redo it in very short order. Now, I want you to know you cannot do that with steel. You can't do it with bronze. So that working with the knots afforded very easy experimentation. And don't we all know, as artists and scientists, that experimentation is really core with the process. Then one more thing is just, well, it's just this kinesthetic sense of fiber. So if you've been welding steel at the community college, trying to learn to weld, I might say, and come home to your studio and you get to play with velvet. So that kind of contrast pleased me. And the thing is that there are millions of knots, and look at all the fabric. So the possibilities of combination, with fiber and knots is what really delights me. So now I'm going to show you the fiber knots that I have made so far. All right, it's about this big. It's a sphere, and I made some very fat knitting needles. And I had to have a stool to prop the ends of them up. I don't know why I made them so long. But anyway, so I made a rectangle, pulled the top and bottom, and I had a sphere. Guess what this one's called? Knit knot, of course. And the next one, this is called embers. For this one, I made a very large crochet hook. So what you're seeing there is a very long, simple crochet chain that I just knotted and tangled. Now this one stands about this high. Oh, why do I keep doing that? Because all right. This sculpture is made of iridescent raspberry Italian silk velvet. And in the sunlight, it emanates a little blue glow. So I found this fabric in New York City one time, and I kept saving it and saving it. When I got into the knots, I said, that's it, you've got it. Now, this sculpture has inspired poetry. And one of the phrases I liked very much, the memory of our iridescent raspberry silk entanglement lingers longer than I would like. So there's a lot more poetry, but that's good enough for now. And the last one, oh, I did it again. Well, we have that right here. So, well, let's just leave it where it is right now. This one is not velvet, because I want you to know it's very difficult to find velvet striped fabric. This is called vortices. So all the linear entanglements of vortices is what I saw for that one. I haven't made any new knots lately, but I'm just so grateful for this opportunity to revisit them and to tell you that, well, when I was making these knots, I didn't know anything about other knots. So they have presented themselves, you might say. And I'm going to tell you how that all got, how I, got that shift in vision. Tom, would you get me this book here? Okay, here we go. The Genesis and Geometry of the Labyrinth. Now, how many of you have ever had a book fall off a bookshelf in front of your feet? Can we see raised hands? And you found that book was really important. Well, that's the story with this one. But I think the word geometry is what stood out for me. And so I started leafing through it, and this book is just full of very complex knot diagrams. And I thought, well, what's that all about? I didn't show you a slide on it, but if you want to, yeah, here's a bunch of them. So then I had to buy it, and the first thing I found out is that technically speaking, a labyrinth is a knot. Who knew that? Did you know? I didn't know. Well, this book has been a portal. It has been given me an explosion of the powerful presence of knots in the universe, in the human body, in scientific research. So I'm very grateful, and I want you to know I've spent a lot of time with this book, but there's still so much I don't understand and still so much to learn right here. So can we have a hand of applause for this book? Okay, now, I forgot to tell you that one of the most important things that this book it told me about was knot theory. Do you know what knot theory is? Anybody into it? Are you a specialist in it?
No.
Oh, well, okay. Well, it was a brand new concept to me, and I found out that in recorded history, knot theory began in 1771. So they've had a long time to figure this thing out. It's like almost like a secret society because it's very complex. So all I'm going to tell you is some of the basic rules that I learned. What we're looking at here is a chart, in a sense. Now all of these configurations are approved knot designs from this knot theory group. Now, you see what's different? They're open. Don't we have knots that are tight? Nautical knots or bow, and so a knot theory knot is open and it has no loose ends. So they take the loose ends and they connect it, and then you have a circle, right? There's no circle up there. But guess what a circle is called? An unknot. Now, I did my best. I dove into the internet. I did physics videos, and I don't know how many, but that's the science part of me where I have to find out. And but inevitably, there was some point there when they lost me totally. Here's one thing. There can be two knots that look totally different, okay? But to the knot theorist, they are the same because of the number of crossings and something else that I don't understand. Maybe you do. But anyway, I had what I needed. So what did I need as an artist? I needed a new limitations, some rules with which to design. Now the first thing I saw here, I didn't see math knots. I saw jewelry, necklaces and pendants. So that's the first part of this inspiration. Now, whatever inspired me, by the way, this officially is knot theory. It follows the rules, okay? But I added my, Anyway, this is the next, sorry, Tom. Okay. Now this beautiful young woman is Clara Mondalova. She's a mathematician, a PhD candidate, and I met her at the Bridges Science Art Conference in Stockholm last summer. What you see there is Clara doing her research paper on my sculpture. Can you imagine how thrilled I was? And here is the sculpture. Oh, I did it again. Okay. Now there's a story there that I don't have time for. How did Clara happen to be doing that? Well, as I said, maybe I'll have to give another talk. But it's an interesting story. So here's Clara. Look at all that math, geometry, algebra. This is only part. It goes up and up like that. I don't know anything about that. What I did was to take a symbol, the Vesca Pisces, I scored it and folded it. No math, but in order to have this configuration, this shape, verified by the field of mathematics. It took Clara's analysis like this. It's another world. And so then, you see, the conference this year was in Austria. Now, I was not able to go, but I heard that they were having a math, art, fashion show. Bingo. I said, I'm going to make Clara a knot theory necklace to wear on the runway. And she did. And this is what she chose. She chose the one, oh, Tom, wait a minute. Yeah, there. She chose the one on the right. So that's what she wore at the fashion show in Austria. Now, well, you've got to see the real thing here. This is wire that's been wrapped in yarn. So if you have a boat neck, you go like this. If you have a V-neck, you go like that. And that's the last one I'm going to show you. Oh, I did it again. So can you, does this follow the math formula for knots?
No,
Okay, Tom, let's hear it. Why?
because you've got an intersection of three lines coming together. Right? No? Am I wrong?
It's the other one's wrong, go further that way.
Oh, it's dangling.
Oh, it's that one.
Yeah.
Well, I was supposed to roll that and tuck it in a little tighter, you know? Well, thank you. I will tweak that. I'll make it work. Because what I saw, oh, it's open, it's loose. But then, yes, there is a loose end there, isn't there? Thank you for your support in this. Okay.
Is that intersection a problem?
Excuse me?
Is that intersection at the top a problem? I don't mean it.
Well, it probably needs to be wrapped. I wrapped some of the wire with fabric. Now, I'm inviting my whole family for Christmas, and I'm making 4 math art necklaces for all the girls in the family. All right, now. Oh, did I tell you I was going to do 3 things? I was going to talk about art knots, why I make them, knot theory, and why it inspired me. I did forget that. So this is the 3rd thing that I've promised, and that is the amazing nature knots and their esteemed position in the forefront of scientific research today. So the first one is my favorite. How about that? This is a protein knot. If I could just design a sculpture as beautiful as that, how about that? Yeah. So it leads the parade of nature knots that I'm about to show you. But before I show you that, I have to tell you something important, and that is that I am a student of the master designer nature. Her geometry and her whimsical, fabulous creations, really, that's what inspires me as an artist. And I will always, I just always know there's something wonderful waiting to inspire my work. Now I have to check and see what's next. Oh, I know. The nature knots that I'm about to show you, the reason I've selected them is they are, in my mind, the perfect examples of her outrageous, brilliant imagination. So here we go. Now, this is a tiny, twisted, molecular biology knot. Looks like rope, doesn't it? This is a quantum knot related to the topology of string theory. Now, who'd have thought? Isn't that amazing? This is a knotted protein. Now, knotted proteins are proteins whose backbones entangle themselves into complex knots. Now, can you imagine that? All on its own, just entangled, you know. So all of, and let's see, we have one more. What I would like to say, what I did, if I found, well, like the first one, the protein knot, then I had to go dive into the internet. I wanted to see all the protein knots. So I invite you to have some fun, explore that. It's endless. Now the next one, oh, wait a minute. Yeah. No, this one. Did I already talk about that?
Yeah.
Well, that was the wrong knot. I'm sorry.
But it is a protein knot.
It is a protein knot, yes. Doesn't it look sort of like the wrappings of a gift? You know, how you scroll it in? And then the final one, this is a quantum knot, and according to my notes here, that the physicists created this, and for them it was an absolute breakthrough. So there are many unanswered questions in the science of knots. And you know, even the research scientists really don't know exactly what's going on. Like, why is a knot so powerful? Why is it so useful? So even in DNA, quantum physics, they're all puzzled to a certain extent. How are they created? And why? You see, it turns out that they're very, very useful in scientific research to decode some of the secrets of nature. So it's way, way, way beyond me, but I can stand sort of wrapped in awe, you know, that, and it occurred to me that maybe this universe of ours is really held together by a series of complex knots. Now, I don't know if that's good news or not. But
As long as it doesn't unravel.
thank you, Tom. But what I did want to say is that my talk began with a question: why not? And it's ending with even more questions. But the happy thought is that science thrives on questions, doesn't it? What would science do if it ran out of questions? So that's the end of my talk, and now I'm turning it over to that brilliant, multifaceted, multimedia guy, Tom. And I get to sit down and watch.
Thank you, Susan. It's really been my pleasure to work with you, and SciArt Santa Fe and Andrea again is amazing. And I'm just a little bit of this presentation. It's really about Susan and celebrating Susan. I just have 3 slides, but I want to
Talk as much as you want.
Oh. Well, I'm going to go back to Susan and her inspirational discovery of knotted proteins. And this is an interesting one. This is very complicated. And it is the major capsid protein of human virus. So,
A human virus.
a human virus. It's, in other words, a virus which will infect a human being. All right. And a capsid.
No, us as a virus.
Oh, well, some of us are, yes. But, so to explain what a capsid is, it's the protein shell of a virus particle which surrounds the nucleic acid content. So really a virus is a shell which is very, very strong, so strong to the extent that we don't know how to really break into it. Our way of countering viral infections is to protect the cells somehow from being invaded, but we can't really violate the protein capsid. It's so strong. And then the nucleic acid is a very simple strand of nucleic acid, which it then delivers into the cell, and then the cell starts producing more viral particles. Very simple mechanism, which scientists think, have the question, is this a living organism, or is it something else? We still haven't, I think the jury is still out on that. But isn't that beautiful? The five-way symmetry is amazing to me.
Does it come that way?
Yes, this is actually like multiple proteins that are knotted together. So there's, 5 proteins surrounding this. It's kind of a vertice, and I'll show you in a second. So,
The colors are so.
well, the colors, okay, so this is not a microscopic image, right? This is some scientists' simulated visualization in a computer. It's a computer-generated image, and so they're using the colors to differentiate different parts of the virus, of the protein. And of course, proteins aren't really ribbons and strings, but these are atomic structures, right? These are molecules, and so if you really did a deep dive, these are atomic bonds and atoms which are all connected together, right? Okay, so the five-way symmetry is why. Why do we have the five-way symmetry? Because the capsid is an icosahedron. Who knows what icosahedron is? Hands. Aha, yes. So icosahedron is a platonic solid, right? It's this is a spinning icosahedron in the center. It's 20 equilateral triangles, and they form a sphere. And this is the shape of the virus, capsid. And you can see the five-way symmetry at the vertices, yes? And that's where that protein resides. And then it interlocks with, there's 12 vertices on an icosahedron, so there'll be 12 of those protein knots, which then interlock to form, the capsid. And these are my glass sculptures on either side, which were inspired by the icosahedron. And why the icosahedron for me? What was the inspiration for me? Well, back in design school, I became a fan of Buckminster Fuller. Who knows Buck? Oh yes, very good. All, hands up for everybody, pretty much. So Buckminster Fuller, the designer of the geodesic dome, right? And a lot of different structures which are based on principles of geometric design which come from nature. So Bucky says that there are 3 building blocks in the universe, and that's the tetrahedron, the octahedron, and the icosahedron. Those are the 3. And so is it any surprise that we have viruses that use that basic building block, the icosahedron? It's the most symmetrical of those building blocks, in terms of surrounding space. It's the most efficient container in terms of surface to volume ratio, right? So that's why geodesic domes are very efficient structures, very strong and very lightweight. They span in large volumes, and yet they protect, what's inside. And so then there's no doubt that nature would be using that structure as to encapsulate its RNA delivery system in terms of a virus, right?
Tom, how big are these?
These are, well, it's about the same as this one. This sculpture spinning around here, was my virus model that I created for the Art and Science of Systems Biology exhibition in 2010, and it was exhibited at the Santa Fe complex. So I've been involved with the Santa Fe complex way back then, and I was motivated by that upcoming exhibition, and I was so fascinated by viruses and the icosahedron, I said, I have to make something for the exhibit. And that is the sculpture right there. And you can see part of my inspirations were these electron photomicrographs of viruses you can see here. And it's, this is what it looks like under an electron scanning microscope, right? Scanning electron microscope of virus. And yeah, that's magnified, think of it, that's magnified 80,000 times. So that's how small a virus is. There's 20 kiln so I'll just walk over here real. So you can see the 20 equilateral triangles, and those are kiln cast glass. And what did I use? I used recycled glass. I used Bud Light line bottles. And I found that we had plenty on hand. So if you take these bottles, you clean them up really good, you put them in a kiln at high temperature, and then you take with a tongs and appropriate protection, and you drop it into a bucket of water, they shatter into tiny little pieces. And then those little pieces, I can then create a template, put it in the kiln, so I have these nice panels, and then I silicone glued them together. That's not anything special silicone, but then I have the virus up here, and it is penetrating my version of a cell wall. This is a partial version, and it's like, the cell wall is really in distress here. You can see it's all, this is slumped glass, so it's the same kind of glass, but then on a stainless steel salad bowl, you put the glass on top, and then it melts down, it drips in the kiln, and after many different firings and adding glass, and you can see it's all slumped, and it looks like, oh my gosh, here's the virus, and then, but in terms of the size, it's not really proportional, because a cell would be very large size compared to, this is just a little piece of the cell. And then I have the copper wire spiraling in there, and so the virus has penetrated the cell wall and has injected its RNA, nucleic acid, which is the blueprint for the cell to now be creating viruses, and so that's my sculpture there.
It's kind of creepy, Tom.
Sorry, the creep, yeah. But this is also interesting.
Beautiful.
But also interesting is it's called, the virus in particular is the adenovirus. So who knows adenovirus? You all know it because it's a common cold. So yeah, that's the common cold. That's what's creating your sniffles. But anyway, now it's back to Susan. So thank you for my little deep dive and being part of your show.
Well, I really am not going to talk about these, but we'll just show a couple of my metal sculptures. Now, this one I see out of my big picture window in my home. And I'm looking south, and the east is that way. So in the morning, not right now, but during spring and summer, the shadow moves all the way across the adobe wall. And in a way, it's a sundial, So if I don't look at the clock and I come out in the morning and say, oh no, it's past 8, and all I have to do is look at the shadow. But this is a spiral, but it looks like a knot in the shadow. In the fact that we are initiating a new science art network in Santa Fe, I was thinking about all of the pathfinders that came before us. Leonardo, of course, to begin with. And then we have, well, I've included Einstein and Bucky Fuller. What else do we have, Tom? We have, Johann Goethe. We can't leave him out. So I just love to think that we're here in this moment in time, but we are part of this historical line, and how they inspire us now, today. So I think they should be honorary members of our organization. And with that, I think, come up here with me, Tom, come on. We'll say that, that's it.